Nyumba yote, vyombo vimeharibika, chakula na kila kitu.
A number of this village which is affected, ni kama 450 families are affected. Ingawa hata wananchi wenyewe wanashangia hii shida kwa sababu hapa ni mahali ya chini. Waliweka mahali ya biashara yao huko chini, tukafanya baraza, tumefanya mkutano nyingi waondoke hapa. Hata ripoti ya meteorological department tumepata, tumewaeleza, lakini watu wanangangania hapa karibu na borehole.
The kind of damage that we have really witnessed is not very, very good. People have lost quite a number of worthy properties. A lot of damage have been caused. Quite a number of vital installations like the gensets for the boreholes have been submerged. The number of troughs which are also being used by relatively all the animals during the dry spell has also been submerged.
Sanduku 3 ya nguo yote naenda. Nguo mimi niko naye hii tu peke yake. Nguo mimi niko naye. Hata hagodo yangu yote imeshaenda.
Tumeathirika na maji. Watoto wangu hawa ni wagonjwa, wameshikwa na ugonjwa kwa ajili ya mvua na maji nyingi na njaa. Siku 7 kamili sasa tujui chakula mahali inatoka. Ni watu tunakaa, kuna mtu yote ambaye anaweza kuja kutusaidia, tunamuona hapa.
And there's a lot more of your feedback on social media as well. Remember, you can also send us an SMS 22155. I'm taking a look at that. Let me read a few. Alukwe Okutoi, you say, what ails Kenya isn't lack of natural resources, it's lack of institutional morality. People are after self-enrichment and not service to people. Otieno Odhiambo, both county and national governments have not done enough in the areas which experience such calamities. No proper infrastructure in place to avoid the same thing happen. Hussein Bargothi, I hope I pronounced that right. This natural phenomenon, we are stranded between towns. In Wajir West, most roads are impassable. And even though business is down, our fear is livestock. Anytime diseases are prone, national government must prepare. Ali, then let me come to you. So what, in your view, should be done by national government, county governments, to be able to mitigate such disasters?
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. Before I talk about the mitigation interventions, Wajir County faces another major risk of cholera outbreak because most of the residents, especially in Wajir town, depend on wells. Those wells, because of the flood and because of the poor sewerage system, will be contaminated, and that is the only source of water we have. So we might be looking at another crisis in the phase. So the county government and the national government have to be prepared and before another crisis occurs. Now on the intervention measures, we have to be very deliberate about this. Firstly, both the county government and the national government have emergency funds for situations like this. We don't see much of a response from the county governments whenever such an occurrence happens and such a crisis happens. One of the residents on TV spoke about people living in, the pathways of the waters and it's the floods. There has to be a deliberate action to move people from risky settlements. We have to move people to a higher ground. That is number one. Number two, northern Kenya is so much in need of this flood water. Within few months down the line, we will be looking at a dry spell again. And this is a resource that we need to preserve. So we have to come up with mega dams that we can use to harvest and store this water so that when there's drought, we don't again find the residents losing their livestock. The county government has to be very proactive about this because this is their mandate. They have to deal with situations like this. They have to have a meteorological department in Wajir that reports to the county government whenever there is an imminent, for example, torrential rain like we have now. We only react when things get worse, but we don't prevent a crisis like this happening. So the county governments have to take deliberate actions. Number one, moving people to higher grounds and getting rid of the settlements that lie on the flood pathways. And two, we must train enough meteorological officers, and we must improve our emergency response. And by doing so, we will be able at least to reach the residents whenever they are in need. And they have to, again, the access roads are very important for emergency to be delivered, emergency help to be delivered. If the roads are impassable, even if you have the resources to help these people, you won't be able to do so without roads. So the roads have to be fixed, both between Mandera and Garissa and between the sub-counties.
Okay, all right. And thank you for that, Ali Bashir. And just to echo your sentiments, there's an SMS coming in here on our SMS line. Mohammed Green from Mandera. You say, I had an appointment with the doctor in Nairobi today, but the roads were impassable due to heavy rains and airplanes costing 13,000 shillings, and they're booked until May. So an interesting time we find ourselves in. Dr. Mwita, let me ask you this. There's also been some strong gusts of wind. Is that something that should worry residents? How do we explain this?
Well, I won't come again. I haven't heard you clearly.
I was asking about some strong gusts of wind, stronger than perhaps we have experienced. Is that something that we should be concerned about?
Please come again.
Okay, all right. I will try and make sure that you can hear us. I think we're having a sound challenge with you.
I can hear now.
You can hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. I was asking about the strong gusts of wind that some people have talked about.
Yep.
Is that anything that we should be concerned with?
Oh, yeah. In some parts of the country, especially along our coastal region, and maybe even some parts in the country, of course, the winds might not be continuous, but they affect some areas, like, for example, areas along the coastline. We have had reports of, these winds even, bringing down trees. And they are basically because of what we call, surface level kind of diffluence. So they are very strong winds. When they come from the atmosphere, as they come down, then they go this way. So whichever parts they come across, then they'll most probably cause some damage.
Okay.
Yep.
Your forecasts over the last couple of months have been extremely specific, right down to a date and time and what to expect. Perhaps as Kenyans, we've not been paying attention to your forecasts, before. But right about this time, they've been, extremely accurate. And that's not to say they were not accurate before. So what, in your view, should happen? What should we do with all of this information that we receive from the Met Department? I know you're very active on Facebook and on Twitter as well. But in your view, because you talked about it, the issue of floods being one of management, what we do with the information, what should we be doing with the information that comes out of the Met Department? What should the national government be doing, the county governments be doing, residents be doing, insurance companies? How should we treat your information to mitigate us from the risks?
My view is that Kenyans at large, and specifically the government, should work, say, at the county level, to try and come up with mitigation measures that can help to avert any damages or any serious problems that may be associated with, extreme weather like now floods. And so issues like drainage systems, the county government should make sure that their drainage systems are up. Then for specific users like farmers, for instance, those who are in those areas that are well, maybe aerated, that they cannot be flooded, then they can take advantage of the rains and probably grow more food so that we can also address the problem of food insecurity. And also for the ordinary Kenyans, sometimes maybe they may take the forecast for granted. It would be good before you leave the house to just monitor and find out what the weather forecast is, so that you can decide whether to carry an umbrella or have a jacket or something like that. And then road users, we have seen floods causing havoc in many parts of the country, like what we witnessed around Suswa, where several vehicles were swept away, and even in northeastern Kenya, where we just heard that people lost their homes to the floods. I think it's up to the county government to work maybe with even the Kenya Red Cross and other NGOs so that they can alert people when such things are coming to happen so that they can be on the safe side.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Venant, then, so what are some of the intervention measures? You're in the thick of things every time we have crises and calamities such as the ones we've seen with the floods. This is a planning issue. What are your thoughts surrounding that?
Yes, in terms of interventions, unfortunately now we are in the firefighting stage where we have to look at really saving lives and maybe preventing injury and also preventing further loss of property. But we will need really the county government and the national government, but mostly the county governments. We need to work more with the community in terms of having the people interact more with the weather predictions, as Dr. Mwita has just said. Kenya Red Cross and Kenya Met Department have been working on packaged information for specific users, for the common mwananchi, for farmers, for traders, in terms of what the alerts mean and what it means to them. The county government needs to work more with the community by maybe working with the Kenya Red Cross and other emergency response organizations to have more localized plans, more localized plans.
And Venant, how do we make ourselves resilient to this? The Red Cross comes in, to respond and more to react. And the work that you continue to do with helping displaced families and those that need emergency assistance is well known and documented and appreciated. But what are some of the things that we can do to be more proactive? So what does the county government need to do, to prevent these things from happening, to make communities, cities, urban centers, those in the north and the rural areas more resilient to floods?
Yes, there are short-term, mid-term and long-term. Long-term about the infrastructure development needs to have proper plans, control about infrastructure development so that we don't mess up with the routes of the surface flow of the water. But in terms of preparedness, in terms of preparing, the county government needs to set aside resources. And these resources should be aligned to plans which are informed by the risks around their environment, this time the flood risks. And they come off very clearly and say, because it has become a cyclic hazard, and say these areas are usually affected, and this is how the population has settled, and this, when the floods come, this is how they're going to be affected, this is what they're going to need, and therefore we need to come up with plans, and then have the actors involved be very clear with the plans. And then, of course, the resources.
All right, so some more short-term, mid-term and long-term planning towards that with the information. Henry, here's a question for you. Wanjiros on Twitter says, whilst we appreciate the Met Service most accurate weather forecasts, would they know how full the dams are? With the heavy rains, what's their take on rain harvesting or lack thereof? Should the rains have a ripple effect? For example, lower billing on our electricity bills by Kenya Power? You're a resident of Nairobi, representing residents of the city as well. I mean, how is it that we have floods? Ndakaini is not yet full. What's our water harvesting strategy? Do we have one?
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues that we need to really address in a more serious way, because it's ironical that at times we have the floods, and at the same time we still have water rationing. And we also need to look at how best we can be able to make sure that we have a national water harvesting program and facilitate even households to be able to put in place measures to harvest water. We really don't have to be in a situation where we have water being wasted away, and then at the same time we have dry taps.
So what we really need to look at is how do we make sure that we take advantage of the rains that we have and make sure that we channel them in such a way that they can be useful to our water supply.
Okay, Henry, are residents empowered to do so? I mean, you remember those little bylaws, for example, in the city of Nairobi when it comes to tapping rainwater, putting gutters around your house. I mean, we can talk about what happens at, at the national level, but, are residents empowered to be able to harvest the water for themselves? Do they have the right infrastructure? Is it expensive for them?
That's what I say we need to be facilitated as by the government so that we have even enabling legislation that support the same. I think there are certain bylaws that are still restrictive in terms of putting in place mechanisms for water harvesting. So this requires a concerted effort between the communities of the residents and the county government, even in terms of sensitization, because people need to understand how they can go about making sure that they take advantage of the rains and harvest what needs to be harvested. And they also need to know what are the enabling infrastructure to make sure that they're harvesting water. So it has to be something that is being driven by the government in collaboration with communities and ensure that apart from the government coming up with a very holistic program, we are also enabling individual households and individual residents to also be able to harvest water. And not just harvesting, but also to use water in a way that does not look like we are wasting. Water conservation. I think we keep talking about closing down car wash, for instance, making sure that people are using water in the right way. But these are things that only come up when now we are having issues with water supply. It has to be a sustainable program and a deliberate mechanism of making sure that people really understand why they have to make proper use of the little resources that they have, and we don't run out of water every now and then.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. That's Henry Ochieng, who's the CEO of the Kenya Alliance Residents Association. Venant Ndigila, we thank you as well. Emergency Operations Manager at the Kenya Red Cross, Dr. Richard Mwita, who's the Assistant Director at the Meteorological Department. Earlier on, we also had Ali Bashir. He is a resident of Wajir County, speaking on behalf of nomadic communities. Much more of your feedback here. Nick Kirui on Twitter says, is there anything that can really be done? Last time we tried, we ended up enriching individuals with 20 billion shillings El Nino cash. Let's just wait for Mama to give us a sign. Dr. James Solomon, you say we need to come up with a permanent solution, and that is harvesting water to curb the menace of floods and to prep for the dry season. Just the other day, we were complaining of drought. Now the rains are here. We're still complaining. I think Kenya is one country that amazes even God. Vet Mbirira bin Samuel, unless appropriate measures are put in place, we're going to keep languishing because of our own ignorance. Moham Ogeni says, it's very sad that the people of Kano in Nyando are still experiencing floods in this age with the county government in place. What actions have both the county and national governments taken? Finally, the Kenyan Somali blog, you say, you're thanking us for raising awareness on this. The people of Garissa, Mandera and Wajir have been struggling due to the floods caused by the heavy rains. You say you need urgent humanitarian assistance from both the national and county governments, in fact, as well as the Kenya Red Cross, ASAP. Thanks for watching our show. Thanks for your feedback tonight. That's it on the show. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole, but stay tuned here on your 24-hour news channel. The news is up next with Linda Ogutu. See you tomorrow.